It's the Raymond Simms Show on the Coliseum Sports Network.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Raymond Simms Show here on Spreaker.com. Also posting on the Coliseum Sports Network YouTube page at youtube.com/user/Coliseum Sportsnet. Coming in a little late here, just a whole bunch of audio problems. It was very bizarre, very out of the ordinary with what I've been dealing with. My microphone didn't seem to be picking up at first. And I was thinking it might have been partly because of the fact that I upgraded the operating system on the computer that I use. So it went from what was the old one, Lion? Is that the one? And then I upgraded it to Yosemite a couple of days ago. So I thought that might have had an effect. It didn't. It just didn't read on the console here, on the Spreaker console here for some reason. But everything is good now. So no problems. Also, when I started off this time around on my second take here, 8 minutes after the hour, I had the volume down on the drop, so I had to redo the drop. So now we have the show. We're here, and everything's fine. Nothing's on fire. Everything's good. I'm glad you're joining me today. Be sure to join me on my social media channels at Simms Coliseum on Twitter, on Facebook, on Tumblr. I'm there. Also, be sure to like the videos and subscribe to the Coliseum Sports Network over on YouTube. This episode will be posted over there upon completion, and also be sure to check back there as I'll be having some more live broadcasts going back up. I'll actually tell you about what's been going on as far as the Simms Coliseum simulation leagues towards the end of the show. So you got to stick around for that. Don't go too far. But today, going to be talking mostly NBA in this first hour, which has been a little truncated, kind of like the lockout season of 2011-2012. It's been truncated a little bit here in the first hour, but for the most part, I'll be talking NBA. I also wanted to give a little bit of my piece about the Gold Glove winners in Major League Baseball, and then I will be talking football, as there's more football tonight, as there always is, almost football every day. And Browns and Bengals will be going against each other tonight. This time just on NFL Network. They've ended the simulcast between CBS and NFL Network, and now there'll be NFL Network the rest of the season. So it's pretty exciting. It's more exciting than you expect a Browns-Bengals game to be. If this was, say, 2005 and it said Browns and Bengals, you could probably sit that one out. But this one actually pretty good, fighting for AFC North supremacy, at least for the time being. So it should be a good one. And I'll get verbally blog about my ideals on that a little later on. But first, of course, I got to talk about the NBA. I'm a basketball guy. And leading off today is what's been leading off all the sports news channels, because there's more than one now, which I think is great. And it's the Cavaliers' loss in Utah to the Jazz on a Gordon Hayward buzzer beater, 102-100. And there's, of course, a lot of panic because this team is talented, but they aren't winning as if they are talented. But at the same time, a lot of people are trying to bring up the comparisons to when LeBron was in Miami and how they started off rough. And then also, heck, when he was in Cleveland the first time around. And it took a couple of years before the Cavaliers could become contenders. And I'm pretty sure the Miami one more so is a fair comparison as far as the struggles and how these talented players are trying to figure each other out. I think that eventually they will. So I'm not going to be one of these people to hit the panic button and say that this team is on their way to the lottery. They're not going to miss the playoffs. They're still one of the main contenders in the Eastern Conference. It just so happens that it's probably going to take a little longer than a lot of people would expect Like if you were to put this team together on NBA 2K of Kevin Love, Kyrie Irving, LeBron James, and everybody else, you would probably get a very talented team, and you could probably go very far just off of that talent alone. But in real life, when people have thoughts and feelings and all that other jazz, it's kind of difficult to get everybody to mesh together right away when all these players, your Kevin Love, your LeBron James, your Kyrie Irvings, are all used to leading their teams. Now, granted, of those three I just mentioned, only one of those players that led their teams actually led them to a postseason at all, or any postseason success. And I think that's the guy that they should probably listen to. But right now, they're not. There's a disconnect right now between the old Cavs, Dion Waiters and Kyrie Irving, and the new Cavs, Kevin Love and LeBron James. I mean, he's a return Cav, but he's still pretty new. It's safe to say. We'll go to the stats here, and I'll just pick off stuff that stuck out at me. Well, there's the fact that Dion Waiters only played 13 minutes, so he wasn't getting in the way too much. The big story here is Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving, starting point guard for the Cleveland Cavaliers, point guard, played 45 minutes, scored 34 points. So that's good. Hey, point total, did great. 0 assists. Just didn't have a hand in anybody, getting any more shots up. As a matter of fact, the Cavaliers only had 6 assists, and it's a pretty significant number. I couldn't tell you what the number was off the top, what the significance is off the top of my head, but it's been a while since the Cavaliers have only given out 6 assists. And usually when you have a team with 6 assists, you're going to lose. Even if it's off a buzzer beater, you're probably going to lose because you're not sharing the ball nearly enough. And in this case, it's incredibly egregious that Kyrie Irving has 34 points, that many points, and no assists. There was a Cavaliers blogger who was saying that, who was trying to take up for Kyrie and the fact that he did have so many points that he contributed to the Cavaliers scoring 100, and that he did it in such few shots. I mean, he did it fairly efficiently, 34 points on 23 shots rather. And that's great if you're a shooting guard. Like if Kyrie was the starting 2 guard and he got 34 points off of 23 shots and he didn't get any assists, I mean, you don't have to expect them to get assists if they're off guard and you're trying to get them to shoot. But he's a point guard. That's why I don't agree with that particular Cavs blogger. I don't remember who it was. I just happened to see it on my timeline last night. That's bad. That's not good when you are a point guard. You are supposed to distribute, even if you're a scoring point guard. You're supposed to facilitate for others so that they can score. And Kyrie did not do that. I don't know what possessed him to not do that. I don't know if he's rebelling against the fact that LeBron is here, if he's really trying to assert himself and say that that he can still be the star on this team and help them win. I don't know what's happening here in the mind of a Kyrie Irving, but whatever it is, it needs to stop now. Or as a matter of fact, as a Bulls fan, it doesn't need to stop. Kyrie can keep thinking all he wants that he is going to be the reason that this team wins the championship. Just go for it. I say just shoot away. Don't hand out anything. Just 30 points every night, 1 or 2 assists, if that. Just keep going. Just keep shooting, Kyrie. And everybody thought that Dion was going to be the problem. And Dion only had played 13 minutes and had 5 points. Kyrie Irving's out here trying to be, the savior of this team when they already got one. They already signed him in the offseason. And you're not passing it to him. Now, that's not to say LeBron didn't try to take care of business on his own, 31 points. He had 4 assists. He actually led the team. So, of the 6 total assists the Cavaliers had, LeBron had 4. So, it's not like LeBron is going to have any trouble trying to, get the ball. But there's other players on the team. We have learned, especially on teams with LeBron James, that he cannot carry the weight alone. and that he and another guy, whoever it may be, whether it's Dwayne Wade or it's Chris Bosh, two people can't carry the weight alone, much to popular opinion. And including on nights like this, on a Wednesday in Salt Lake City, it's not going to work. If it's not going to work now, how do you think it's going to work in the playoffs? It isn't. And that's really the thing, that the underlying current here on this West Coast road trip. The loss in Portland, which admittedly was a bigger loss, and the loss here in Utah, and then they play in Denver on Friday, and that'll be on national TV. It's kind of the underlying current here on this road trip here for the Cleveland Cavaliers, is that whatever they were doing before, it's not going to work. People are trying to take shots at LeBron for the fact that he's being, quote-unquote, passive-aggressive. I'm putting air quotes up. You might have been able to tell because my bones kind of creaked in the fingers there when I did the air quotes. Should have did calisthenics before I started doing air quotes. Should have prepared myself, stretched before the show. People will call him passive-aggressive for how he was criticizing the old habits that he referred to. But he's not wrong. Like, there's a reason that when LeBron left, the playoff chances left along with him. And Kyrie Irving was leading point guard in that. And Dion Waiters was his 2 guard right behind him. There's a reason that they did not make the playoffs in any of those 4 years. And he had to come back for them to even have a shot at the playoffs, let alone any Eastern Conference Championship ambitions. So he's not wrong, and I think that over the course of this West Coast road trip, we're probably going to we might see a couple more games where Kyrie and Dion and any other players left over. I actually don't think there's really any Cavaliers left over, to be quite honest. I think Brendan Haywood's the only guy, and no, Will Cherry I think is a point guard, or is a rookie rather, but yeah, we're probably going to see more of this Cleveland pre-LeBron ball from Kyrie and Dion, at least on the remaining part of this road trip, before it starts kicking into their heads that, hey, this isn't working, we're still losing. And the team will eventually figure it out. But I think that if you want to blame somebody, if you feel the need to, for a 1-3 start, that I think that you should point the fingers at Kyrie Irving. Mostly pretty much at Kyrie Irving, especially because tonight Dion didn't do anything. I mean, you can't point at a guy for not doing anything. He missed 3 of the shots he put up, but he didn't play enough to really. I mean, he got to the line like 5 times, and he made 3 of those shots, so you can't really blame him too much for what's going on, unless you want to just make him a scapegoat. But for the most part, it's Kyrie. He's going to have to get his act together here and act like a point guard, or else why be a point guard? I mean, they actually need one. The backup behind him is the aforementioned Will Cherry, so he might want to actually go ahead and be the point. Or LeBron James is so good at initiating plays and bringing the ball up. And I do remember vaguely that they tried to start LeBron at point early in his career, or at least NBA Live 2004 did. I remember that. That was interesting. But for the most part, I'm looking at the box score, and all I'm seeing is Kyrie just not being a point guard. And it's like, what's your purpose there? I mean, they can ship you out. They can find somebody more willing to play the part of being the point in Cleveland for a potential championship team. Like, just because you're an all-star doesn't mean you're not necessarily replaceable. I mean, he already has a number 2 guy in Kevin Love that can score, and there's definitely some point guards out there that are more adept to passing than they are to score, but are still able to create their own shot at times that are needed. Just saying. But Cleveland will eventually get it together. It's just going to take some time here. But as a Bulls fan, I'm just going to relish this while I still can before they do get it together, because this is just too awesome that a team that should probably have figured this out by now just hasn't. So it's definitely fun to watch for me. We'll have more basketball talk after a quick break here, including the fact that Derek did not get hurt. Yes, that is news. You're listening to the Raymond Simms Show on the Coliseum Sports Network. Back on the Raymond Simms Show here on the Coliseum Sports Network. Just got done talking at length about the Cleveland Cavaliers and their problems and why it's all one guy's fault. Because why not point some fingers around? I know a lot of people are thinking that guy is LeBron James. I think it's Kyrie Irving, to be quite honest. LeBron James, he's already great. He knows what he needs to do. He's coming to do what he has to do. He gave out more assists than anybody did last night in that 102-100 loss. So it's not his problem. I would direct it to the guy who's supposed to be the starting point guard, who scores all the points, but then doesn't give out any assist for anybody else, even though he's supposed to be a point guard because that's his job description, and that's what he's been going all the way back to when he was in youth league, probably. He's always been a point guard, and yet he's not passing. That blows my mind. But yet, everybody wants to blame LeBron. Also, in the Eastern Conference, a team that seems much more adept for their championship aspirations, and it could probably make it a one-man race if the other team doesn't get it together, is the Chicago Bulls. They go out on the road, sort of, to Milwaukee. It's almost to the point where a Chicago-Milwaukee game is a lot like a Lakers-Clippers game used to be in the same arena, because you'll still get a lot of Lakers fans for what's supposed to be designated as a Clippers home game. In this case, a Bulls-Bucks game, as it has been for years, is pretty much just an extended Bulls game, kind of like the Bulls and Bucks are playing in the same arena, but the Bulls are more popular. That's what it's gotten to. And in this case, it's been the same, especially towards the end of the game when the mostly pro Bulls crowd started cheering MVP for Derrick Rose, and the Bulls ended up with the 95-86 win. So they are 4-1, 3-0 on the road. So that's a good sign, as they'll eventually have to start getting into their extended road trip because of the circus. The circus comes to town. I've actually been to it one of those times. It was fun. But for now, a 3-0 record bodes very well for the Chicago Bulls and their prospects on that big road trip that they'll have eventually. As for this game here, it was Taj Gibson and Pau Gasol handling things up front. Joakim Noah was out again due to an illness, so next man up. And with this season's Chicago Bulls, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. The team is more than capable of stepping up. Taj Gibson with 23 points, Pau Gasol with 22. And really, that's all they needed in terms of heavy lifting. But all of the starters ended up getting double digits, including Derrick Rose, played 31 minutes and got the inverse of that in terms of points with 13. 4 for 10, not the best shooting night, 40%, but still came in and mostly facilitated. See, Kyrie had 7 assists. He did have 4 turnovers, going to have to clean that up. Oddly enough, Jimmy Butler did about the same thing, had 1 more point with 14, but then also had 7 assists and 4 turnovers. But if you're a fantasy person, he also had 6 rebounds and 4 steals, and I'm sure that helped you out nicely if you have Jimmy Butler on your roster this week. If you're not starting him, I'm sure you're missing out, and I kind of laugh at you on the inside. But, those things happen in fantasy. I understand. I know your pain, at least on the football side. But the Bulls just going out there looking good. It's a game of, I've had to remind myself here early in the basketball season that it's a game of runs. Because there are times when I'm like for instance, the Suns-Lakers game, which I watched the other day, which while the Lakers are awful, and that was a very fun game to watch, and I'm probably going to credit that more so to the Suns because they're the ones that were playing more up-tempo. The basketball is a game of runs, so even when you have a bad team like the Lakers, they're still going to have a lead at some point in a basketball game, even if they're that god-awful. So I've had to remind myself that over the past couple of days, over the beginning of the season here, and I had to remind myself of that with the Bucks game, the fact that the Bucks were ahead at different times in the game, and I was just not understanding what was going on. It's a game of runs. It happens. Team gets hot. Team gets cold. It's all right. In the end, the final score should really tell the story, and in this case, it does. And I think the true story here is just a simple fact that Derrick Rose got through 31 minutes unscathed. He's fine. He's okay. No reports. He wasn't on the ground. He didn't have to be helped off. There was one instance he actually drew a foul, and he went 2 of 5 from the line. No, he didn't. He went 2 of 5 from 3. He went 3 of 4 from the line. He drew a foul, and he was on the ground, and he got up. He got up quickly, like any other player would. But just in that split second that he was on the ground, I'm like, get up. Get up, get up. We're very jittery in the Bulls fan base. It's very troubling whenever Derrick Rose is on the ground. If Derrick Rose lays down in a bed, I'm going to be afraid that he won't get up. If he is laying down on the ground to see something under the bed, or if he's like looking under something and he's on the ground, I'm going to fear that he won't get up. If he's like looking at something and he reacts to it and winces, I'm going to think like it's a shooting pain in his legs. I'm that jittery about him. And I probably won't be not jittery until like 2 weeks after the season is over, regardless of the outcome for the team. But everybody in the Bulls front office, they're saying everything's fine and not to worry about it. That's hard to do, but okay, sure, I'll bite. I'll go for it. One of the main bugaboos about Tom Thibodeau and his coaching, really, it's excellent coaching. It's great, but one of the complaints is how he runs his starters ragged, how he gives them an absurd amount of minutes. He didn't do that today, or last night rather. He didn't exactly do that. He kind of had to because Joe Kim was out. So he had Taj playing 44 minutes. He had Jimmy playing 41. And he had Powell playing 36, even though Powell is, of course, 30. In his upper 30s, pushing 40. So I don't think, considering how deep the team is, and they go pretty much, I'll say, 11 deep, honestly, in terms of players that can play starters to rotation minutes. I don't think that we'll see too much of that being a habit. But in this case, you have guys like Doug McDermott, who only played 7 minutes, and Tony Snell, who played less than a minute, or I assume less than a minute because he's on the box score, but he has minutes of 0, so he's probably in for like a few seconds. But yeah, a lot of people talk about the depth of this team, of the Bulls. And I understood it on paper when the signings were happening this season, but it really comes through in terms of just the rotation, not even the production, because the bench actually didn't do all that great. It was 11. They only came out with 11 points off the bench compared to Milwaukee, who had a lot more. I'm not about to do the math right off the top of my head. So they didn't have the best production. Shot 4 for 17. So it was a pretty rough night for the bench. But just the simple fact that on most nights they can be there for the team and be 6 deep on a normal day, I think that's amazing for the Chicago Bulls team. And to couple my discussion about the Cleveland Cavaliers and their struggles with the Chicago Bulls, the Cleveland Cavaliers on the back end of a back-to-back on the road on the West Coast, 2 hours or 2 time zones off from your home, David Blatt chose to play 8 players. And I can't necessarily blame him when you look at who's available. I guess now, in the early season on a Wednesday in Salt Lake City, would be a good a time as any to play more players. But no, he did not. David Blatt didn't. He did not play James Jones. He did not play Brendan Haywood. He did not play Alex Kirk. He did not play Will Cherry. He did not play Joe Harris, solely on coach's decision. All of them were well and were probably dressed, wearing their warm-ups. And those warm-ups were as crispy at the end of the game as they were at the beginning when they were shooting in warm-ups. Especially James Jones, who was specifically brought in to shoot threes. I figured that he would have been a much-needed perimeter presence. I understand Brendan Haywood is not as mobile as he used to be, if he ever really was, at the pro level. Now that I think about it, every time I think of Brendan Haywood, I just think of him as big. But I'm assuming he was mobile enough that to be considered in the draft. You got Alex Kirk and Will Cherry and Joe Harris, all young guys that could have used some minutes against a Utah Jazz team that's full of young guys that are supposed to be developing and not beating you off of buzzer beaters. But no. David Blatt played 8 guys. Tom Thibodeau played 10, only because one was actually out and sick. And I think that's going to be the difference here down the line for the Chicago Bulls and the Cleveland Cavaliers in terms of the Eastern Conference Championship. Like, I'm trying to hold off on any hubris. I'm trying to not get ahead of myself. I mean, this is still the beginning stretch of a long marathon. We're less than a week and a half into the regular season. But the way things are trending, and, like I said, basketball's a game of runs. Same thing for the season. It's going to go up. It's going to go down. But the way that things are trending, in terms of the reliable players that you can look at, if you look at the rosters of both of the teams in the East, Chicago and Cleveland, you see the importance of depth, and you see the difference in terms of reliable players on both sides. And you start to realize that Chicago just has a lot more in terms of reliability, in terms of guys that can come in and make a difference in big games compared to what Cleveland has. They have a LeBron, and that's probably going to make a huge amount of difference. They have a LeBron and a Kevin Love, and that can make a huge difference as well. I'm so down on Kyrie Irving. I used to like him. I remember his interview with Pete Holmes on the now canceled Pete Holmes show on TBS, and I enjoyed his personality. I love the Uncle Drew commercials. I wish they would come out with more frequency, but I guess that's done. I'm kind of sad about that. I wish they would put out more. But right now, Kyrie's being a real big jerk, and that's going to jeopardize his team's chance because there's really no one else behind him that can come in at the point and run and bring the ball up the court and initiate anything. They need him. So when you don't have that kind of depth that somebody else can come in behind you and pick up the slack when you need it, that's problematic for your team's championship chances even early on in the season. Because the same thing happened with Derrick Rose, where he is relied upon to score, but he also facilitates. That's why he has 7 assists. Not to be outdone by Jimmy, who also had 7 assists, which is also great that everybody's sharing the ball. I mean, look at that comparison. that the Bulls distributed the ball 4 times as much as the Cavs did last night. That is amazing to me. But at the same time, just to go back to the depth discussion, because I feel myself like drifting away at parts. I'm like a boat on a rough sea, but it's tied up to the dock, so it's like veering off, but it pulls back. The depth discussion that I was trying to initiate here is the fact that when you look at both the Cleveland and Chicago's roster, just at full strength, which in this case just means adding Joe Kim back to the roster, you got 11 guys on the Bulls that are reliable that you could expect to make a difference. There may be 10 if you take Tony Snell off, I suppose, but I like him. So 10, you got 10 guys that are reliable to make a difference in a game for Chicago, and you have 8 that can make a difference for Cleveland in a big game. And LeBron may account for 2, so that may be 9, perhaps. But for the most part, I'm looking at the Bulls, and they're really looking like the team to come out of the East. Like, it's becoming, just at this point, until Cleveland gets it together, because everybody believes that they're going to get it together, because, I mean, come on, they have to, right? Right? At this point, it looks looking more and more like this is Chicago's conference to lose. Not just the regular season. They don't have to win the regular season. I learned that the hard way the year they got 61 wins. But once you get into the playoffs, it looks more and more like it's Chicago's conference to lose. That they just have to grind out those 7-game series leading up to the finals, and they'll come out with the Eastern Conference crown. Now, what happens on the other end in the finals, that's a whole other topic there for another time. We'll have a little bit more basketball to cover right after a quick break here. You're listening to the Raymond Simms Show on Spreaker.com and the Coliseum Sports Network. Raymond Simms Show here on the Coliseum Sports Network, streaming live at Spreaker.com. Just got done talking at length about the Cavaliers and the Bulls. I think I find myself in terms of editorial decision making probably going to be covering the boat race of the Eastern Conference Championship at length in probably for a while. Just it intrigues me because it affects me. I'm sure that people in perhaps Indianapolis or DC probably have a different take on how the East is going to go, and probably takes exception to a lot of what I'm saying, but that's why we do this. So we can have that type of discussion. If you'd like to discuss stuff with me, the chat line is open on the text chat line, that is. I can't take phone calls, don't have that technology. Is open over on Spreaker.com if you want to check this out live. If you're catching this in the archived version, for instance, on YouTube, when this posts over to YouTube, and it does it very quick, and I'll tell you why in a second, you can comment, leave a comment, like the video, and be sure to subscribe to the Coliseum Sports Network on YouTube. I noticed, because the first time around when I was trying to start the show at the top of the hour, and I had issues with my microphone, I had to back out of that console. I had to cut off that broadcast so I could figure out what the problem was. Just turned out, I don't know, it wasn't picking up my microphone or whatever. It was just something very simple. And I went through my timeline and I saw that it had already posted to YouTube and it already posted on my Twitter timeline. And wow, that works very quick, and it's very impressive in terms of how quick that works, the technology that works. So if you miss anything that I have said on this show, then I guess you don't have to really worry about anything, because it's going to be up in like 1 minute. Maybe it might take a little longer when I do these full 2-hour broadcasts, but otherwise, because it posted up in like a minute, if that, because it was only like a few seconds before I realized, as I was fading out in the intro music, before I realized that there was something wrong. So maybe it might take a little longer, but the turnaround, very quick in terms of how quick you can get I can get an archived episode out there, thanks to Spreaker.com. They did not pay me for that. I brought up Indianapolis and Washington, D.C. because of the games from last night. The Indiana Pacers and the Washington Wizards. That was the national game, the first national game last night, which I missed most of, admittedly, because I was watching the Bulls and the Bucks. But the Pacers and the Wizards going against each other in DC on ESPN went into overtime. It was very subdued overtime. I caught the last of the fourth quarter, and in overtime, all of overtime, leading into the Clippers-Warriors game. Very subdued overtime. And just in terms of the crowd, didn't seem as packed of a crowd as I would expect a team like the Wizards doing well. But, people are busy in D.C. It's a big city. A lot of people doing stuff, making deals, maybe sleeping at that point. Probably went home out to their suburban homes out there in Maryland and Virginia and whatnot. So, can't blame them. It's just kind of a light night. And it was against the Pacers, a struggling Pacers team that doesn't have Paul George. So, I understand people probably sitting that one out. But missing that game meant missing out on a very big scoring performance from a Pacer. Not Paul George, because he's gone probably for the year. But from Donald Sloan. Donald Sloan, of all people. My only memory of Donald Sloan is that he was the first player to be fined by the NBA for flopping. That is his distinction to me. But he went out there, played 43 minutes, scored 31 points on 10 of 21 shooting, including hitting 4 threes. So he went out there and was like, I'm going to make this day mine. And more power to him, quite honestly. He hasn't had to pick up the slack, but he's chosen to for whatever reason. He had 14 points and 7 assists against Atlanta a couple of days ago, or not more than a couple of days ago. It was last Saturday. And now he just shows out against Washington, 31 points, 7 assists. So he doesn't see Kyrie. He does not forget to distribute. He scores his 30, but he also passes for 7. So that'll tell you something. But he also had 5 turnovers. So not the most refined point guard out there. But if you give him the ball and he'll feel the need to shoot, especially when you got other guys like David West and Rodney Stuckey and C.J. Watson and Paul George out due to injury. Then somebody's got to pick up the slack. And you would expect it to be somebody. I mean, when you look at the Pacers roster of guys that were available to dress, you would think it'd be Roy Hibbert, really. Like, you'd think it'd be Roy Hibbert. Luis Scola, I mean, that's why they brought him in. They thought he was going to be a game changer. Even C.J. Miles, I think I remember him from his Cleveland days, probably, contributing in terms of scoring just a little bit more. But no. Top 3 scorers for Indiana were Donald Sloan with 31, Chris Copeland with 19, and Solomon Hill with 14. I don't understand that. Chris Copeland, I do a little bit. He's a scorer. That's what he's supposed to do. But he comes in off the bench and scores a double-double. 19 points, 12 rebounds. Now, he has 19 points, and he did it on 21 shots. Not the most efficient, but he still comes out with a double-double, which is good for him on an individual level. I didn't notice, though, there was a couple of times in the late going where he's bringing the ball up the court, and he just seemed so slow. Like he was plodding. Like he was running at normal speed. He was bringing the ball up the court like at a normal pace, but it just seemed so like slow. I don't know. It was like I can't say it was a turtle, bringing it up, because he's not a turtle. He's faster than that. I don't know. Maybe he's not designed to bring the ball up the court, but it's like his speed. It's like he was in a video game and his speed was reduced down to like a 50. And like he's still running with the same animation as all the other players, but he's doing it at a slower pace. It was very weird. I don't know. And then I also thought he kind of looked like Blake from Workaholics at certain like ankles and stuff, because he had the long hair and the headband, and that's how I would expect Blake from Workaholics to wear his basketball attire if he were to play for the Pacers. And he probably could, and he'd probably get a lot of points here in terms of just the scoring that goes around. So I will say, even though they lost, and even though they did it inefficiently, they shot 39%. Goodness. I give props to the Pacers that have chosen to step in and take the scoring load, because someone has to score points. Somebody out there has to. And Roy Hibbert's not doing it, even though he's the starting center. He is the only star that is not hurt right now. And he is by design supposed to be close to the basket. He went out there and went 0 for 7, including a 3 that I will get to in a second. 0 for 7. So he came out with 2 points off of free throws. He hit his free throws. Hit your free throws, kids. He had 9 rebounds, so that's good. At least that part's not missing. He had 5 blocks, so he had a very good defensive performance. A fairly good defensive performance. The defensive metrics will decide whether or not it was a really good defensive performance. But 5 blocks, so that's quite impressive. But no points, 0 for 7 shooting from the field, which is surprising because you would think he would get more. Maybe they would make the game more post-oriented so he'd get more shots up. I know not every shot in the inside is a gimme, especially when you're challenged by other centers. But you need to get up more than 7 shots when you're the starting center on the team and you're the best player left standing on the team. But no, that's not what Roy Hibbert did. And as a matter of fact, at the end of the game, the reason that the team lost in overtime, 96-94, was because of the fact that he decided that he was just going to go ahead and put up a 3 in the final seconds. I'm not sure what Frank Vogel drew up. I think of him as a very smart coach, so I'm going to go out on a limb and say that they did not plan on having Roy Hibbert shoot a 3 at the end of the game. It was probably a broken play, which you would understand. It's a lot of role players out there trying to do something in big moments, so fairly understandable. But Roy Hibbert gets the ball in his hands at the perimeter with Donald Sloan, the man that put up 10 threes throughout the game, next to him. And he puts up the 3, and he misses, and the team loses by 2. Also keep that in mind. Roy Hibbert with the ball, down 2. What do you think is going to happen? He tries to force it inside, put up a shot, in the post, might draw a foul, might get the two to take it to double overtime. But no, Roy Hibbert, closing seconds, down 2, ball in his hand, chucks up a 3, and that is why the Pacers are 1-4. You talk about snake-bitten teams, and Indiana would have been the early candidate before what has all happened to Oklahoma City, which we'll get to. We'll talk about them on another day. I don't remember their next game, but I'm sure we will be able to talk about them very soon. Maybe I think they're playing tomorrow. Is that nationally televised? Of course, the second game of the doubleheader is Cleveland and Denver. I can't remember off the top of my head here without probably looking to see who the early game is. I thought that maybe the Thunder are on the East Coast. Are they on the East Coast? Maybe. I don't know. I'll look at that in a minute here. But Indiana would have been the early candidate. Of course, the gruesome injury to Paul George. But I'm glad I remember that injury vividly. And I'm glad that he, is in high spirits. He's going to try to, get better as he can. But then you also have David West. You have your 2 point guards, not just your starter, but your understudy is also out. Or actually, as a matter of fact, it's 3. George Hill is off of the active roster, but he's also hurt too. So you got George Hill, your starter, is out. You got the backup, C.J. Watson, is out. You got the third string, Rodney Stuckey, was out. So that leaves Donald Sloan. So it's really just been a rough go here for the Indiana Pacers. It's been interesting watching the Pacers develop pretty much over the course of this millennium. They were of course, in the finals in 2000, and then they were playoff contenders for the early part of the 2000s, and they dropped off, and they were really bad. Nobody was showing up to Conseco, what was then Conseco, and then they spurt back up with the development of Paul George, and they become a finals contender again, really the true challenger to the Miami Heat, and then you get this happening, and they fall off again. So, with teams like this, that they have management that's able to, figure things out for the better. Maybe they're going to have a rough season, but I would not be surprised if they turn things around. I just went through the Pacers at length, and they lost the game. How about those Wizards, who I only have a little bit of time for here? It's kind of funny how I divvied this out. Not much production from the bench. Didn't need them, but they went pretty deep. Only 2 guys didn't play due to coaches' decisions. That left 6 guys to get some tick, including Chris Humphreys, who got a couple of minutes in there. The highest scorer off the bench was Kevin Seraphin, 6 points. The big story, it's John Wall. Just amazing out there on the floor for the Washington Wizards. Bradley Beal's out right now, so Garrett Temple steps in, and he does a fairly good job, 16 points, but he does it off of 14 shots. Kind of rough there for him. But still, he got the points. He did what he had to do. Step in for Bradley as a 2 guard, and he handled his business. John Wall he's just been amazing. I've always had faith in him. I know he's had to deal with a lot there in Washington, some bad teams, some really goofy teams, and eventually the management moved all those people out, brought in some good guys, and now the team is playing at a high level. And John Wall, who's always been developing and playing at a high level, he's leading the way. It was particularly funny because there was just a point in overtime when, of course, he was taking on Donald Sloan, who he let who also had 31 points. He let him score that many, so I'm sure John Wall was not happy. It was just at one point, it was very weird, in the middle of overtime, where John Wall was like, you know what, I got dinner plans, I gotta go home, I got some stuff I need to clean, I gotta wash some dishes, let me just take over here. And he scored 6 points on his own, and that was pretty much the clincher towards the end of the game for Washington to get the win, even though it was a close win. John Wall just decided to take over, and I'm sure he wanted to take over throughout the game. I mean, he probably wanted this win to come out a lot bigger by a larger margin than what it was. But for that moment in time, John Wall was like, look, I've let too much slide. I'm going to take over now. And he went on his own 6-0 run, and he was able to carry his team, because that's what point guards do, Kyrie. 31 points and 10 assists, 3 steals, even though he had 5 turnovers for John Wall. So just a good night for him. I want to know who didn't have a good night there. Paul Pierce, 11 points. He got to the line, hit all his free throws, 5 for 5, but shot 3 for 15, including 0 of 4 from 3, including a shot on target for Paul Pierce that could have ended the game in the fourth quarter. Could have been a walk-off win for Paul Pierce and the Washington Wizards, and it was right. The 3 was just right on target, and it didn't go in. Went in and out. And that was kind of an emphasis for Paul Pierce, and he had a 3 for 15 night, 0 of 4 from outside. And like I said, only saved by those free throws that he hit all 5 of them to even get him above double digits. I don't know how he was in the rest of the game. Maybe he was taking bad shots. Maybe he was forcing up shots. But like from what I saw, like I said, that buzzer beater attempt, the shot was on target. It should have went in. It just didn't. So maybe it was a combination of all of those. You know where I can look to figure all that out. NBA.com/stats. All 15 of his attempts. I can look them up, look up all the videos, and I can judge for myself. Maybe I should have did that last night in terms of show preparation, but I didn't. Wizards get the win 96-94. One more basketball game to talk about, and then we're going to talk about some Gold Gloves and some football in the next hour. This is the Raymond Simms Show on the Coliseum Sports Network. Raymond Simms Show here on the Coliseum Sports Network. Just got done with the first hour. Look, I'm doing a second one. Isn't it great? And I'll be doing the full second hour, technology permitting. But I'm glad that you're joining me here. Be sure to join me on my social media channels, on Twitter at Simms Coliseum, on Facebook like the Simms Coliseum page, and on Tumblr. Follow me on Tumblr. You can reblog all the stuff that I reblog with everybody. I come into this chuckling. I just randomly saw somebody kind of not slamming Paul Simon, but like downplaying him. Like, yeah, like Paul Simon reminds me of Diet Soda, and then somebody got mad and was like, nobody talks about the Piano Man, and I'm like, wow, that's quite the artist to ride for, Paul Simon. I mean, I only heard his stuff. Like, that's not my scene in terms of the type of music Paul Simon plays when I hear Paul Simon's song. you get no complaints out of me. I just found it funny that is the particular type of artist that you ride for. But all the same, second hour here, I talked about the Cavaliers, talked about the Bulls, and I talked about the Pacers and Wizards game, and why the Pacers are good and bad at the same time, and why the Wizards are doing pretty good for themselves as well. John Wall, I will say this, because I was thinking about this last night during the game, especially when he went on that 6-0 run by himself to kind of put the game away for Washington. I remember when he was in high school, it feels like yesterday, and me and my cousin would watch like mixtapes of him on YouTube, like highlight videos of him on YouTube from high school, where he was just out there just showing out, just had all the skills. He was throwing down dunks. He was doing amazing crossovers. And I remember saying this back in those days. I was like, John Wall, that is just a name where you have to be like amazing at whatever you do. And he's out here. He played his year at Kentucky. He's developed in Washington. So I think I'm a big John Wall fan. I have been for a while. And it really just think of that development from just those high school days, those high school mixtape YouTube days, and now he's right in front of our TVs. When he takes over, he's ready to go. He's a fierce competitor. He's going to be a big reason that Washington is successful for years to come. I don't remember his contract stuff. I say that, and then I immediately think about contract stuff. I guess that's kind of the way that the NBA is going. But as far as I know, in terms of his contract, he should be good to go in Washington. As long as they keep winning, I don't see why he would go anywhere else. The question is, will Kevin Durant join him eventually? Yeah. Think about that one as we move into some West Coast flavor. I was showing a little East Coast bias there, a little Great Lakes bias there pretty much. I covered 4 of the 5 teams in the Central Division. I was going to say all the teams in the Central Division. I did not cover Detroit. They are not worthy of being covered. They are not good right now. I just hope Stan Van Gundy can do something about that tire fire, because I believe in Stan Van Gundy, and that team has a lot of tradition and history. I would like to go back to hating on the Pistons again. That would just be nice for me. I would enjoy that, on hating on a competitive Pistons team, even though I liked them when they won the championship. I wanted them to win that, because if they took down the Lakers, that made me happy. I really did not like the Lakers back then. But for the most part, the Pistons aren't coverable. So 4 teams in the Central Division. Let's talk about the West Coast here. The Clippers and Warriors were the back end of the Wednesday doubleheader on ESPN. So that's really what I was here for. Like, I had my night all set up, and it went all according to plan. I was like, I'm going to watch Bulls Bucks. I'm going to catch whatever is left of Pacers Wizards, and then I'm going to watch Clippers Warriors, and it's going to be awesome. And it was. Because even though the Warriors completely whooped upon the Los Angeles Clippers to the sound of 121-104, it was still very enjoyable. At least, particularly the first half. I mean, second half, it was kind of garbage time, so there wasn't really too much to see there. But for the most part, it was just a really fun first half when the Warriors were trying to just bust it open early on so that they could coast the rest of the way. It was just really cool. Like, it was very fast paced. It reminded me why I enjoy watching Warriors basketball. It's just getting in transition, running up the floor. Maybe it finishes with a great contested layup or a slam, or what makes it even more fun to me, when they kick it out to the corner for 3, especially even when it's not a fast break, when it's a half-court set and they're just moving the ball around and it's fast-paced and you don't know who's going to end up with it or what they're going to do with it, and then it finds its way into the corner, it finds its way on the wing for 3, and they just put it up and it goes down, and Oracle just gets electric. That is awesome. And there was a lot of great, scrappy, active hands from both sides, really. I mean, even though the Clippers lost by a lot, they had 12 steals on the night. And you have the Warriors with 7 steals. Maybe not the cleanest with the ball, 23 turnovers. But it was pinball a lot there in the first half, as the Clippers were trying to stay in this and the Warriors were just taking over with big shots. The ball was bouncing around a lot. There was a lot of transition just up and down the court. And it was very impressive, and it was very fun, and it makes me like Western Conference basketball. Because even the Suns and Lakers game that I watched on Tuesday, even that was like fairly entertaining too. And it was the Lakers we're talking about here, but they were still fun to watch. And you got the Suns out there; they're starting to Showtime, or they're not Mike D'Antoni Suns fast, but they're getting up and down the court because they have the players and the personnel to do it. So. Just more of that here in the Bay Area. Steve Kerr looks like Neil Patrick Harris. I just now realized it. Looks a lot like Barney Stinson. Just not specifically Barney Stinson, Neil Patrick Harris, more so than, everyday life Neil Patrick Harris. He doesn't really. It's Barney Stinson specifically because of the suit and how Steve Kerr looks just a lot thinner. I'm sure he works out and stuff in his older age. So he was out there on the court. He got his first tech. It was funny when J.A. Adonde, who was the sideline reporter for ESPN, was asking him in between quarters what he thought about the technical foul that he received. And Steve Kerr took it in stride. He felt he deserved it. He saw it almost as a rite of passage because of the guy that gave it to him. And he started to explain why he thought the call that he was arguing to get the tech was wrong. And he had to step back because I guess it's funny because he has been such a good broadcaster for so long. And even though the guys that are filling in for him, Chris Webber, Grant Hill, and Greg Anthony, are doing an amazing job, you still kind of miss Steve Kerr. So he's used to being honest over the past, several years. Heck, even when he was in the front office in Phoenix, he's behind closed doors for the most part. He could probably be honest as he wants to be, talking with players and coaches and stuff. So just in a position of brutal honesty over these years, he now steps into the coaching ranks where he has to be honest with his players privately, but he might need to hold off just a little bit on what he says about what he says in public, in interviews and stuff, lest he get fined. Now, it's understandable, ball players, coaches, they have a lot of money, so the fines that they divvy out for these types of things, maybe not too much of a hit for them, but it's the main principle of being fined. You don't want that to happen. You don't want to cause any controversy or stir up anything. So I think Steve Kerr, he said enough to stop himself and not get in trouble for it. But we'll see. I haven't heard anything. I got SportsCenter on mute here so I can catch up on any things coming up, like any big news that happens to pop up. I don't see anything about Steve Kerr getting any fines. So I think it was a no harm, no foul type of situation. Just pretty funny that he had to step back. He had to take off the analyst hat there that he had there during the interview. I do think that with his history of being an analyst, he'll be more willing to do sideline interviews. I will say this, I've enjoyed them early on. I know that sideline reporters don't necessarily have the biggest use in sports broadcasting, but they can get something. If they're good enough, they can get good interviews where you get to see the personality out of somebody. Sometimes people don't give personalities and they give the boilerplate answer. But in certain cases, I think that the coaches, at least the ones that they've talked to so far this season, have been they've been more open. They've been more open. You get a more honest appraisal of what's going on. And no two people are probably going to be more honest and upfront about their team during the between quarter interviews than Steve Kerr and Doc Rivers. Two honest analysts, two guys who have been analysts and have been in that chair and have been very straightforward. And then besides, Doc Rivers doesn't have anything to hide about his team. They're full of veterans, and he's a veteran coach. He can be the one that could have complained about the ref call if he was the one to be getting the tech in that situation. But Steve Kerr, he has to hold back a little bit here. It's his first year. He's got to take it easy. But Steve Kerr has done a lot of interesting stuff in terms of the lineups because he can, quite honestly. He just has that type of lineup. They are stacked as well. I look at Chicago and I'm just amazed by that because I don't really see much like that in the East. But when you look at the West, I mean, you get a team like the Warriors who is like a black sheep pick in terms of the finals in the West. And And they got some good players to work with for them. They bring in Sean Livingston from Brooklyn, which that just works on a lot of levels in terms of Sean Livingston's inherent skill and then just the height. Like 6'7" point guards, 6'5", 6'7" point guards, just they realized after Penny that just wasn't gonna work. Like Magic worked, Penny worked, Oscar Robertson worked. That was about it. Well, Sean Livingston is bucking that trend. He's a tall point guard, and he's out there. He can fill in for Steph Curry when needed, and he fills in very admirably. 3 for 5, so very efficient, doling out 6 assists, just great off the bench. Then you have Andre Iguodala, who could be a starter, but Steve Kerr's decided to go with Harrison Barnes and Draymond Green, and Andre Iguodala doesn't seem to really have a problem with that, or at least while they're winning. He's more than happy with the role of stepping aside there for the 2 young guys to come in his place and him coming off the bench. He still gets 21 minutes, so the rotations are working out. And when he was called to shoot, he hit everything. 100% from the field, 100% from the line, 3 for 3 from the field, 2 for 2 from the line, and one of those field goals was a 3. So he finished with 9 points. So getting that production off of the bench, not 100%, but as long as in the NBA, as long as you're shooting over 45%, I think that's the median over the past several years in terms of field goal percentage. As long as you're shooting over 45%, then you should be fine. So if you get that production off the bench, it's great. Brandon Rush, I'm hoping that he can show that he's still a good bench player. I know he got hurt very badly. It wasn't last season. I think it was the season before. And he's kind of been recovering from that. But in his place, Leandro Barbosa is coming in. That man's got to be like 50, and he's still just as fast as ever. Like, I just saw him just out there, no breaks, just jumping all over the place, just running all over the place. And I'm like, where do you get this energy from? I don't even have that much energy. But he goes out there, he shoots 5 for 7, finishes with 13 points. So that's a very impressive bench to have, and that doesn't even count David Lee, who couldn't start because he got hurt mid-game. We'll see what the prognosis is with him. But David Lee out there, of course, in this case, coming off of the bench. It's a very deep bench. That's what I want to say about the Warriors. The Clippers, on the other hand, man, I don't know what's happening with them. They've really been struggling over the past several games. They fall to 3-2. One of those losses were against the Kings, who took care of business against Denver. So I'm not sure what to make of the Clippers, because when they lose very ugly. It's I think I'm probably going to just have to look deeper at what's going on, because that might be the key moving forward. Like, the Clippers could very well still win upper 40 to 50 games for sure, but those losses might have an underlying theme, especially when they're bad losses like this to really good teams. That might make a difference in the playoffs if they can't figure out what it is. I don't have to figure out what it is, but they're the ones that really have to figure it out. They're the ones that want to win a championship this season. So the Clippers and Warriors, even though it was a blowout, it was a fun blowout to watch. Just give me some good basketball, man. I don't even really care about the score. I just want entertainment. Some dunks, some threes, some crossovers, some back and forth, some transition, just some fast pace. Just give me some of that, and I'll be fine. So I was very happy with the Clippers-Warriors game, more than anything. But after this, we will move away from basketball, and we'll talk some football. Thursday night, Browns-Bengals on the ledger, Buckeye State supremacy on the line. You're listening to the Raymond Simms Show on Spreaker.com and the Coliseum Sports Network. Raymond Simms Show here on Spreaker.com and the Coliseum Sports Network on YouTube. Hashtag so much hoops. I talked so much hoops. You so missed out on it. But if you did, don't worry. This show will be archived shortly after the completion, both on Spreaker.com and at the YouTube page, youtube.com/user/Coliseum Sportsnet. Glad that you could join me today, going all 2 hours here. So worry not. I know it's really been dependent on how much material I have for the day in the sports news, and then other things kind of come into play as of late. But for the most part, as you know, it's supposed to be 11 to 1 Eastern here on Spreaker.com. That's what is that? It's 8 to 10 Pacific. That's 10 to noon here in the Central Time Zone. That's 6 to 8 p.m. in South Africa. Don't ask how I know that. I just do. Thursday Night Football is back. I have not been a big fan of Thursday Night Football, not because of the fact that it's on Thursday or what it does to the players. I feel like that's kind of overblown. I think it's overblown in terms of how the players complain about it. I don't think that it plays as much of an effect on teams in terms of preparation and energy. Now, when you have an injury, when you're coming off an injury, it is important to have those extra days of rest. So coming off a Thursday game or going into a Thursday game might be a little rough, and that affects things. But in terms of just if you're a player at fairly full strength, I can't say you're at full strength, especially not 8-9 weeks until football season. But if you've been okay throughout the season, then you should be ready to go on Thursday. I mean, that's just how it goes. But in this case, it's really just been because of just how many blowouts there have been, how many rough games. The only time that a blowout has been entertaining for me this season was the Atlanta-Tampa game, because I really just wanted to see how high the Falcons would take it in terms of their points, but they didn't. I also wanted to see if Devin Hester could get another return for a touchdown. He did not. So, yeah, other than that, I've really just been out of it as far as Thursday night is concerned. I actually still on the fence if I'm even going to watch Browns-Bengals, but I did feel like covering it because it is on paper looking like a good matchup on paper in 2014. There was a time where this would look horrible and nobody would understand why this was being televised, but this year the Bengals have been competitive as of late in their history, and this year is no different. They are 5-2-1, and this will determine if who will take the AFC North. So it's and of course it's a division game, period, and you got to win those to really make a difference in terms of winning your division. So this is a key game on a lot of levels, on the rivalry level, because these are two Ohio teams. Like, I'm sure it's going to be very intense at the bars in Columbus and Dayton at the halfway line. It's also for the AFC North, and which is very important because between the Ravens and the Steelers and the Bengals and the Browns, it's really up in the air because all of them are playing so well right now. The Browns currently 5-3, the Bengals 5-2-1 because they tied with the Panthers not too long ago. And everybody in the division is over 500. You have the Bengals, I said before, they're 5-2-1 because their win percentage is 5 divided by 7 games. You throw out the tie. Pittsburgh 6-3, Cleveland 5-3, Baltimore 5-4, and they have all looked particularly impressive. As a matter of fact, the Ravens are the team with the highest scoring, with the highest point differential in the division. It's plus 66, and they're in 4th. That is just it's really amazing what's happening with the AFC North, because in most cases in recent years it's been Baltimore followed by Pittsburgh, Baltimore followed by Cincinnati followed by Pittsburgh, and then Cleveland's just the team that everybody beats up on. Not this year. You got 3 teams above 600, and you got Baltimore knocking on the door after losing their last 2 games. But yeah, that AFC North is particularly impressive, and here are 2 teams trying to make a difference in terms of their record. So this is going to be a very huge game. It's also particularly huge to note that it's still up in the air as to whether or not Giovanni Bernard is going to be playing, and that's going to make a sizable difference in the running attack. Now, he's likely to start right now, despite the hip and clavicle injury, but at the same time, you have Jeremy Hill, who's also behind him. And he was able to get 154 yards and 2 touchdowns on 24 carries against Jacksonville. But that's Jacksonville. What is that going to mean against a Cleveland defense that actually for years has been pretty competitive? Even when the Browns were bad on offense, which actually was just last year, quite honestly, with the same quarterback, the defense was still something that the Browns and Browns fans could hang their hat on. That's why you saw games like 6-3 and 10-7 for the Browns last season, was because in most of those games the Browns offense could not generate any offense, and the Browns defense was keeping the other team's offense from generating any points. So in this case this year, the defense is still hanging on there. They're still fairly useful in terms of what they've been able to do. And then at the same time, the offense is greatly improved. And I thought it was silly back at the beginning of the year that Cleveland decided to go with Brian Hoyer. Like with all the controversy of them signing Johnny Manziel and all the controversy that went with them, I thought that the head coach of the Browns was just being Mike Pettin was just being petty and choosing Brian Hoyer, or saying, no, this is a 2 quarterback thing. They got to fight for their spots. And we're gonna go with Hoyer. I'm like, come on, man. Just because he gets a lot of attention doesn't mean that you got to penalize him for it. But I understand why, because the Browns, at least by Brown standards, especially recent Brown standards, they are doing pretty well for themselves at 5-3 and 3rd in the division, and having a very real chance of beating the Bengals in Cincinnati tonight. So as I'm giving you this preview, I'm talking myself more into watching this game. So I might check this out and give this a look, because it could be very good, or it could be a total beatdown that I waste my time with. Not quite sure yet, but either way, this could go very well for Cleveland. It could. One of their key losses, though, while I was just talking about Giovanni Bernard for Cincinnati and his importance to the running game, for Cleveland, in this case, it's Jordan Cameron, the tight end, who's really had some big games for Cleveland. Just back in Week 6 against a division opponent in Pittsburgh, 3 receptions, 102 yards, and a touchdown. He didn't get to feast against Jacksonville, and he got 3 catches, but he was able to get 40 yards against Oakland last week, again in Week 8 rather. And but he's going to be out due to a concussion, not concussions. That would be really bad if he had more than one at the same time. But he's been ruled out with a concussion, so he's going to be out, and that's going to take out one reliable receiver in the receiving game for Cleveland. But you have guys like Andrew Hawkins, who's really been the most reliable player for Brian Hoyer under center, and you also have Taylor Gabriel, who has a touchdown to his name this year, who's been able to make big plays, but is not as proven. But in terms of who has the upper hand here, I mean, you got to go with the more established quarterback in Andy Dalton. Like, you got to go with your gut. That's what I'm doing, at least. I think even though, regardless of who is in the backfield, coming out of the backfield, running plays, I think that Andy Dalton will be able to carry the load for Cincinnati and be able to facilitate how he needs to, whether it is handing it off to Giovanni enough, or if it's a matter of throwing it, because usually the guy on the other end of those catches, A.J. Green, is just an amazing big play receiver, just back in week 3. And he's been dealing with injuries this season, and he's probable for tonight's game. But if he's in, he's going to be a threat. 6 receptions, 102 yards against Tennessee. 5 receptions, 81 yards at New England. And then he even got 3 and 44 against Jacksonville in that big win in week 9. So he's a very big play threat whenever he starts. Cleveland fans who want their defense to excel are probably hoping that P next to AJ Green turns into an O for the late scratch. But even still, you got a guy like Mohamed Sanu, who's been the most reliable receiver out of either the receiving corps in the state of Ohio. Mohamed Sanu has done very well. He had a big game against Jacksonville, and that's going to create huge problems for that Cleveland defense that has done pretty well, has only allowed 21 points a game this season. But that's how I feel about it. I think Cincinnati still has the upper hand. You just got to go with the gut. But it should turn out to be a good game because it's a rivalry and because it is important in terms of division standing. It's a big game, and I'm hoping that for once on Thursday night they deliver on the fact that it is a big game. Gold Glove discussion and college football coming up after this. You're listening to the Raymond Simms Show on Spreaker.com and the Coliseum Sports Network. Back in here, the hour number 2 here on the Raymond Simms Show, Coliseum Sports Network on Spreaker.com. Glad that you're joining me here. Talked a lot of basketball. Talked some football there. Got a little football in, the American sports landscape. Whenever you have a general sports talk show such as this one here, you got to throw in the football. You got to, for the audience. They love the football, unless you're a show that dedicates yourself to other sports, which I do not, at least not yet. As a matter of fact, speaking of general sports and going all over the place, baseball. The Gold Glove Awards came out just the other day, and for the most part, they're looking pretty good. Very, very good selections from the people who select. I don't know who chooses the Gold Glove awards, but good on them for the most part. For the AL, at first base is Eric Hosmer of the Royals. At second base is Dustin Pedroia for the Red Sox. At third base, Kyle Seager for the Mariners. The catcher, Salvador Perez for the Royals. In the outfield, you got Adam Jones in center, Alex Gordon in left, and Nick Markakis in right. At short, you have J.J. Hardy and the pitcher, Dallas Keuchel for the Astros. For the NL, at first base is Adrian Gonzalez. At second base is DJ LeMahieu of the Rockies. Third base is Nolan Arenado of the Rockies. The catcher, Yadier Molina for the Cardinals. And in the outfield, in center is Juan Lagares. In left is Christian Yelich of the Marlins. In right field is Jason Hayward. And the shortstop, Andrelton Simmons of the Braves. And the pitcher is Zach Greinke for the Dodgers. And for the most part, those are pretty spot on. You can't really argue with those for the most part. Though I will say there were a few, literally a few, because few is usually looked at as three, who probably stuck out to me that probably could have had better selections and probably were results of the halo effect of these two teams doing so well in the playoffs. There's Nick Markakis in right, there's Adam Jones in center field, and there's Eric Hosmer at first. So you look at the success that their teams had over the course of the playoffs and how far they got at the hands of these particular players. Well, once you get a little advanced, not too advanced, but I think advanced enough, defensive runs saved, you look at the fact that Adam Jones and Nick Markakis are actually on the shorter side of that out in the outfield, which says something in the outfield because, you know, you get so many out there, you save so many runs in the outfield just, you know, playing because so many balls are hit out there. I mean, heck, you look at Alex Gordon, he saved 21 runs defensively this season compared to 2 for Adam Jones and 1 for Nick Markakis. So statistically, at least by this one metric, it doesn't really add up in terms of him being out there of both Markakis and Jones representing out there in right field. Now, I know you're thinking like, well, if you're going to complain about this, especially for Orioles fans, because I just took out 2 of their best players and complained about them, it's like if they're so bad, and I'm not saying they're bad, I just think there might have been statistically a better choice for the Gold Glove. So they're not bad. They're still very good at what they do. But if I were to find any replacements, it'd probably be somebody like Kevin Kiermaier of the Rays or Daniel Nava of the Red Sox, maybe. But those aren't, you know, as flashy. Those aren't very flashy names in terms of getting the Gold Glove award. Like, I think there's an importance of visibility and importance of your team actually winning games. And then, I guess that's not true when you look at the 2 Gold Glovers for the Rockies, but a bit of visibility. You got to see them. And I think that's kind of what got Adam Jones and Nick Markakis over the limit there that they needed to get the votes to get the award. So in place of Nick Markakis, guys like Kevin Kiermaier or Daniel Nava or Josh Reddick probably would have been better picks for right field. And then in center field, you got guys like Leonis Martin and Jackie Bradley Jr. and Lorenzo Cain. That would have been my pick, and Jarrett Dyson for the Gold Glove. But those are the guys that I mentioned that won it, and more power to them. Congratulations to all of them. They work hard, and they surely earned it. So I'm not going to take anything too far. You know, I'm not going to really take too much away from them. It's just something that I noticed. Oh, also, because I almost was about to lead out of the conversation, Eric Hosmer at first. Probably could have been some better guys there, like Steve Pearce, if you want an Oriole, or Chris Davis, or like Mike Napoli. Just in terms of defensive runs saved, those could have been some names. Albert Pujols, because he's a big name, so that could have been a good name for Gold Glove. But in the end, it was Eric Hosmer, and he was an important part to the Royals World Series run. So you can't, like, I'm not about to storm there's no one office. I guess you could go to the baseball office. I'm not going to pick it out there because Eric Hosmer is the first one at first base. But just some people to consider if you go by defensive runs saved. Just getting you to think differently. For the most part, just coming into this, I have no problem with the players that were picked. I just came across the ESPN article that kind of pointed out that maybe there were some misses there in terms of the Gold Glove winners, but nothing too much to complain about. Just something to fill a good 10 minutes of sports talk, because why not? In terms of college football, Clemson and Wake on Thursday night football, that matchup looks bad no matter how far back they planned it. I'm sure they planned it a while back, but Clemson is number 22 in the country, and Wake is not. I will tell you how I feel about this game after a short break here, and then also whatever else I can think of. Odds and ends on college football after a quick break here. It's the Raymond Simms Show on the Coliseum Sports Network. Wrapping up here on the home stretch here on the Raymond Simms Show on Spreaker.com and the Coliseum Sports Network. I just realized I forgot to even think about previewing the Thursday night NBA games. Just lost track of that. I was so focused on making sure I had what I had to say about Wednesday night that I forgot about Thursday night. Of course, Thursday night NBA is back. Apparently, I'm not. It's not ingrained in me like it usually is. I'm not in mid-season form of catching the Thursday night game. Man, I almost forgot all about that. Thought I was going to have to settle for Scandal or something, which I'm still mad at. I'm not watching that show. I'm mad at it right now. I'm waiting until the storyline turns around. It took a turn that I didn't like, so I'm mad at it right now. And I'm mad at Grey's Anatomy 2, and How to Get Away with Murder is kind of so-so. So I guess I don't have to settle for that because there's Thursday NBA to be had tonight, so that's going to be fun. I don't know the games because I didn't look them up, but just something I realized during the break here that I totally forgot to cover that. So, my bad. Next Wednesday, I'll make sure that I do better of previewing. Because I just previewed Browns and Bengals. That's what we just came out of not too long ago. We just came off of MLB Gold Glove discussion. My hot take, my strong opinion about the Gold Glove winners. It was okay. It was good. Nothing too wrong. But maybe you should have considered these other guys over some of the guys that you picked. But it was fine. Yeah, we're about the real opinions here on the Raymond Simms Show. But just got done talking about that. Going to talk about Clemson and Wake because that's what I said I would. Because I forgot about NBA Thursday, which I would have covered in the first hour at least. But Clemson and Wake facing off on ESPN. If you're that into college football, you're probably going to be the only people watching it. Wake fans, Clemson fans maybe that don't care about basketball, and diehard college football fans that don't care about anything else but college football. Because football fans are going to be watching Browns and Bengals, or they're going to be watching something else because that game might not sound sexy enough to them, even though, as I said in my segment about it, that it might actually be a pretty good game. Hopefully, fingers crossed, please, for the love of all that is good about Thursday Night Football. And then, of course, basketball fans are watching NBA Thursday. They're done for the rest of the year. If you are a basketball fan, then you're probably watching NBA Thursday from now until May. That pretty much. So they're gone. Clemson and Wake is not going to bring them back. But they are facing off. It's an ACC matchup. It could be a trap game for Clemson. They're playing on the road in Winston-Salem. So you got to be careful, Clemson, because they're number 21 in the country right now. Pardon, but they are very far away from the 4-team playoff, but if they still want to get a good bowl, they're going to have to work their way up here. They could even probably sneak their way in if they can hang on and maybe get to the ACC championship. I can't recall off the top of my head how the ACC divisions work. They confuse me so. The Big Ten used to, but they switched theirs around much more easily. So, and in the Pac-12, their divisions are easy to remember. But I know, the ACC is very weird. So I'm going to go ahead, and I'm going to do this now, live, and look this up on the computer, because that's what I'm supposed to do, is research this sort of stuff. And yes, Clemson is in the same division as Florida State. So, in order to get to the ACC championship, to get consideration for the playoff, they're going to have to get through Florida State, or at least on the schedule, because I think they've played already. Have they not? Let's look at the schedule in real time here. They have played them and they lost to them in overtime. So they're probably going to have to win out, and Florida State's going to have to lose a game or two, as I'm looking at the record here, the overall record, to get consideration for the college football playoff. But right now, they're at the bottom, number 21 in the nation. Just beat Wake. Just beat the game in front of you. And that they can very easily fall into that trap of going off on the road, but against a weak team. Oh, we totally got them. Next thing you know, it's the third quarter. Oh, we don't have them. Wake Forest 0-4 in the ACC. So again, very easy game. Should be doable for Clemson. Shouldn't be a problem, which is why this game does not look to be particularly entertaining. Key here is Cold Stout. Is Cole Stout, not Cold Stout. That's something different. Cole Stout has been filling in for Deshaun Watson, who hurt his finger. I don't remember if they said it was broken or not, but he hurt himself. He's healthy enough to return to under center, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to be playing tonight. And as far as I know, at this moment right now, which is 11:48 Central Time, so 12:48 Eastern, I don't think he's playing. I still think Cole Stout has the start. So we'll find out about that. That's going to be a huge key because Deshaun Watson was doing so well for this team. 1,176 yards and 12 touchdowns. If he is well enough to play, he's going to show out against Wake Forest. Just is. I haven't watched much ACC football this year. I just have a feeling that if Deshaun Watson goes out there and plays, and because he's well enough, and it's up in the air rather than not, but for the most part, I'm thinking that is going to be a good game for Deshaun Watson if he does play. I know nothing of Wake Forest. I do not know their life or their story this season. I know that they have not been good. They have not been good in the football world for a while, if ever. But and I'm sure Wake Forest fans will remind me of all the time they won championships. But I just think Clemson should be able to walk over Wake Forest, no problem. That's my preview. Even if Stout is under center. He was rough there against Florida State, I know that much. But he did very good against Syracuse, and this is about akin to that. You come off this Syracuse win with 209 yards. Even if he's under center, he should do well enough against Wake Forest. Moving on. That's as much college football preview as I'm giving today. Oh, also, in terms of college football news here, as I'm wrapping up the show here, slowly but surely. Forgot it already. Oh, college football playoff rankings. Fine with me. All of them are good. My only issue last week was Ole Miss being in there, but they made it a lot easier for us to figure out who was the top 4 teams in the nation. And there's a lot of discussion for who it is, who could be at the top. We just know it's not Ole Miss. They're just not there anymore. Where did they fall with that loss? I'm looking at them now. Oh, they're 11. Okay. I was going to say, geez, wait, they didn't get taken out, did they? No. They're fine. 7-2, so they're number 11 now. So they're on the outside looking in. So you got Mississippi State, Florida State, Auburn, and Oregon. Then you have Alabama, TCU knocking at the door. Kansas State, Michigan State, Arizona State, and Notre Dame. All of them 7-1, 5-10. So just a whole other 6 teams just chomping at the bit to break into that college football playoff, especially Arizona State out of the Pac-12. They've really been taking care of business. I caught their game there against Utah, or was it USC? It was one of those, but it was a close game, and it was a great game to watch. So they're doing great out there on the West Coast, but they're still going to have to. They got a ways to go because they're number 9. They're going to have to just win out dominantly. TCU showed us what they could do. They are trying to prove to people that they are still a good football team and capable of getting into the college football playoff, and I think they're making a good case. And I learned not to doubt Alabama after what happened there against Texas A&M. I learned. So they're at number 5. I'm going to let them do their thing and work their way in. Michigan State has a very key game this coming Saturday against Ohio State. That's going to be fun to watch for college football fans. I'll probably be around to watch that, maybe, but I might also be doing other stuff. You never know. I could either be somebody who has no plans on Saturday, or I could be an international man of mystery. Either way, there's no in between. It's a zero-sum type of thing. But Michigan State, Ohio State, even if I missed that game the first time around, I can catch it on Watch ESPN because I know it's going to be very good. Ohio State is number 14 in the nation. They want to raise their prospects for the Big Ten championship. They also want to get into the playoff. Even though they're well on the outside, if a win against Michigan State could do them some good, and it could do Michigan State even more harm. So they're definitely going to be looking for that win there. So that's going to be a good game just off of the sheer stakes of that game. It should be very good. I hope both teams deliver. I always think that games are going to be good, and then they turn out to be blowouts, and I'm like, why? This had all the makings of a good game, and I know a lot of you probably experienced that as well, where you were expecting a game to go very well, and it goes very wrong. One of the most recent examples I can think of was the Cleveland-Portland game. I chose to watch Suns-Lakers instead. I just went with my gut, and I was like, man, I'm going to miss out on Cleveland-Portland. Lo and behold, Portland wins at home. The Blazers and the Cavs. Blazers win at home big time, and I'm like, hey, I made a good decision here. Sometimes that's why you got to watch the game. That's why they play the game, because sometimes it just doesn't go the way that you expect. So that'll do it today for this episode of the Raymond Simms Show. I thank you for watching, or I thank you for listening. I mean, you can watch on YouTube, but it's just going to be a picture, a still image, so you can watch there. But I thank you for listening today here on Spreaker.com. If you missed anything, don't worry. The archive is coming soon, both to Spreaker and on YouTube as well, so you can watch it over there. Be sure to follow me here on Spreaker.com. I do want to say that I thank all the followers, all the people that have just latched on here and have bought in to the Raymond Simms Show. I thank all my followers there. Don't be afraid to chat live here when I actually do the actual show, which is 11 to 1 Eastern here on Spreaker.com. Don't worry about chatting. Don't be afraid to do it. That's what I was trying to say. So I thank you guys for following me, and hopefully you enjoy these when you listen to them, because I enjoy doing these shows a lot. Also interact with me on Twitter at Simms Coliseum, even when the show goes off the air, because I'll be there. I'm always tweeting something. Like my Facebook page. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/users/Coliseum Sportsnet. I'm still working on getting the UBC together so I can start doing it regularly again. I enjoyed those 2 games that are up. Those are actually going to be replaced very soon, but I enjoy doing them. I enjoy bringing it to everybody. So those are coming very soon, but there's a lot of videos on the Coliseum Sportsnet that you can just check out in the meantime, in the interim. And then also on Tumblr, if you're into that type of thing, it's a pretty cool site, so you can check that out and check out Simms Coliseum there. Thank you guys. Join me tomorrow where I'll be doing this all over again. It's the Raymond Simms Show on the Coliseum Sports Network and Spreaker.com. All right, 1.